Gross domestic product, or GDP, is a term we hear all the time. It sounds complex, but the idea is quite simple. GDP is the total value of everything a country produces in a year. Think of it as a country's total income. If a country makes many cars, sells a lot of oil, or builds many new houses, its GDP goes up. This number is very important to economists and world leaders. They use it to measure how big and powerful a country's economy is. A high GDP often suggests a nation is doing well. It implies there is a lot of economic activity, which should mean more jobs and more money for everyone. However, GDP can be a misleading number. It tells us about the size of the economic pie, but it does not tell us how that pie is sliced. A country can have a very high GDP, but most of the money might be in the hands of a very small group of people. The average person might not see any of this wealth. Imagine a company where the CEO makes millions, but the workers earn very little. The company's total earnings are high, but that doesn't mean every employee is rich. This is the same problem with using GDP alone to judge a country's well-being. It measures the quantity of economic activity, not the quality of life for its citizens. This creates a paradox. We see nations with impressive GDP figures that are still classified as developing. This is because development is about more than just money. It is about the health, education, and security of the people. A high GDP can come from one or two major industries, like oil or mining. While this makes the country's economy look large on paper, it might not translate into better schools, hospitals, or roads for the general population. The wealth stays concentrated at the top, or it might even flow out of the country entirely, leaving the majority of people behind in a state of struggle. Therefore, relying only on GDP to understand a country is like judging a book by its cover. The number tells a story of economic production, but it misses the crucial human element. It does not account for inequality, environmental damage, or social progress. A factory that pollutes a river increases GDP by producing goods, but it also harms the environment and public health, which GDP does not measure. To truly understand a nation's condition, we must look beyond this single, powerful number and examine the lives of its people directly. We need to ask if the economic growth is inclusive and sustainable for the future. Several countries serve as powerful examples of this GDP paradox. Take, for instance, Equatorial Guinea. This small African nation has one of the highest GDP per capita figures on the continent, thanks to its vast oil reserves. On paper, its citizens should be among the wealthiest in Africa. However, the reality on the ground is starkly different. A huge portion of the population lives in poverty, with limited access to clean water, sanitation, or basic healthcare. The oil wealth has enriched a small elite, but it has not been used to build the foundations of a prosperous society for all. This phenomenon is often called the resource curse. Another example is Nigeria, Africa's largest economy. Its significant GDP is also fueled by massive oil exports. Yet, Nigeria faces immense developmental challenges. The country struggles with inadequate infrastructure, an overburdened healthcare system, and deep-seated inequality. The wealth generated from oil has not been enough to lift millions out of poverty or provide consistent electricity to all its citizens. The focus on a single commodity has often led to the neglect of other important sectors like agriculture and manufacturing, which could provide more jobs for more people. The money flows in, but it doesn't always flow down to the streets and villages. Moving to another part of the world, we can look at some nations in the Middle East. Countries like Qatar and the United Arab Emirates have some of the highest GDP per capita in the world, primarily due to oil and natural gas. They have built stunning modern cities and impressive infrastructure. However, this wealth is often concentrated, and these societies face questions about social freedoms and the rights of a large migrant workforce. While citizens may enjoy high living standards, the economic model relies on external labor that does not always share in the prosperity. The overall development picture becomes more complicated when we consider these social factors. These cases all highlight a central truth. A country can be rich in resources and have a high GDP, but still be developing in crucial ways. The problem is not the lack of money, but how that money is managed and distributed. When a nation's economy depends heavily on a single natural resource, it can lead to corruption, political instability, and a failure to invest in the long-term well-being of its people. The wealth becomes a source of conflict and inequality rather than a tool for broad-based development and prosperity for every citizen. A high GDP does not automatically create a healthy and educated society. These are outcomes that require deliberate and sustained investment. In many resource-rich developing nations, the healthcare system remains weak. There may be a shortage of doctors and nurses, especially in rural areas. Hospitals might lack modern equipment, and access to essential medicines can be difficult for the average person. So, even if the country is technically wealthy, a family might struggle to find good medical care for a sick child. Life expectancy can remain low, and infant mortality rates high, despite the nation's economic output. Similarly, education is another area where money alone is not the answer. A country can have a high GDP, but its schools might be underfunded and overcrowded. Teachers may be poorly paid and inadequately trained, leading to low-quality instruction. Access to higher education can be limited, preventing talented young people from reaching their full potential. Without a well-educated workforce, a country cannot diversify its economy beyond its natural resources. It remains trapped in a cycle where it sells raw materials, but lacks the human capital to build advanced industries and create sustainable long-term growth. Then there is the issue of equality. GDP says nothing about fairness. In many high GDP developing countries, the gap between the rich and the poor is enormous. A small segment of the population may live in extreme luxury, while the majority lacks basic services and opportunities. This inequality is not just about income, it extends to gender, ethnicity, and geography. Women might face barriers to education and employment. Certain ethnic groups might be marginalized. People living in rural regions may be cut off from the economic progress seen in the capital city. This social divide can lead to unrest and instability. These challenges show that national development is a complex task. It is not just about increasing a number, it is about building institutions, fostering social cohesion, and ensuring that the benefits of growth are shared widely. A strong economy is a necessary foundation, but it is not the entire structure. Without strong public services and commitment to equality, GDP can exist alongside True development means creating a society where every person has the chance to lead a healthy, educated, and dignified life, regardless of the country's total income. The lesson from the GDP paradox is clear. Money does not solve every problem. A big economy provides a country with powerful tools, but those tools must be used wisely. If the wealth from oil or minerals is not invested in people, it creates a hollow prosperity. It builds a glittering facade that hides deep structural weaknesses. A nation's true strength lies not just in its bank account, but in the health, knowledge, and resilience of its citizens. When leaders focus only on growing the GDP, they risk ignoring the very things that make a country a good place to live for everyone. To get a more accurate view of a country's progress, we need to look beyond GDP. Many experts now use other measures, like the Human Development Index or HDI. The HDI combines GDP with other important factors, such as life expectancy and literacy rates. It gives us a more balanced picture of human well-being. A country might have a moderate GDP, but a high HDI if it has invested well in healthcare and education. Conversely, a country with a high GDP but a low HDI is a clear sign that its economic wealth is not translating into better lives for its people. This broader perspective is crucial for the international community. When we understand that a high GDP can hide deep-seated problems, we can offer better and more targeted help. Instead of just providing financial aid, we can support programs that strengthen public institutions, fight corruption, and promote education and healthcare. It helps us see that development is not just about economic growth, but about building fair and just societies. It encourages a more nuanced conversation about what it truly means for a nation to be successful and prosperous in the modern world. Ultimately, understanding the limits of GDP helps us all become more informed global citizens. It reminds us that headlines about economic growth tell only part of the story. The real measure of a nation's progress is found in the daily lives of its people. Do they have access to good schools? Can they see a doctor when they are sick? Do they have the opportunity to build a better future for their children? These are the questions that get to the heart of development. By looking for the answers, we move beyond simple numbers and toward a deeper, more meaningful understanding of our interconnected world.